What do most people do that wealthy individuals find offensive? When we vocalize our financial woes. When I was in college, I would tell my friends straight up that I was too broke to go out and party with them, and it only ever bothered one guy. He'd say something like, "Why did you feel you had to tell us that?" In disgust, like I just said something I should be ashamed of. I was raised well below the poverty line and worked all through college, and most of my friends came from lower to upper middle class families. It was normal to say, "I'm broke," if you were at the time. It was weird because in the same breath, he refused to acknowledge how much more privileged he was than the rest of us. He'd say we're just well off when we asked about his family. Meanwhile, at 19, he drove a brand new BMW. His parents hired a maid to clean his dorm room weekly, and he bragged about finding multiple unopened Wii systems in his basement because his parents kept buying them and forgetting about them. Spoiled kids are a different breed. Used to nanny for a rich family. The kids were sweet, but holy fuck, they also had never been told no in their entire lives. I worry about the kind of people they're going to grow up to be. I've yet to meet someone who grew up rich that will blatantly admit it. It's always we were pretty well off, or we were comfortable, or my parents were pretty successful. Then I present to you my classmate. His family is rich, and he always brags about his status and how he is better than the poor people. When he crashed his motorcycle, his parents immediately bought him a new one. One day I overheard him talking to our teacher after class, and he was talking about how taking advantage of poor people is the key to success and how one's ego is their most valuable aspect. My teacher just listened, but I heard him chuckle a bit at his story. I don't know the rest. I left quite early into their conversation. He even admitted he won't learn anything in school, which is a vocational school that specializes in networking and programming, since he knows how to be successful, so he doesn't need any more knowledge of any sort. Sounds like a narcissist. Utter lack of empathy, almost verging on Machiavellian. At the end, refusal to believe he has room for growth. Entitlement throughout. Apparently sitting at work. I'm not talking an office job. I mean like cashiers and manufacturing jobs. They'd rather I stand there for 20 minutes doing nothing than sit there for 20 minutes doing nothing. Customers will complain about me doing nothing no matter what, even if I'm actually doing something. Seriously, this is true. There are so many jobs that could be done while seated that aren't only because it appears more professional to stand. I never thought of it as a class distinction before, but it really could be. I'm having flashbacks of George Costanza and a security guard in a rocking chair. My grandmother's boyfriend is very old money, and he literally finds poverty conditions offensive to his eyes. My grandmother drove through the city one time while the three of us were in the car together, and he freaked out at the sight of broken down row homes and asked her to drive away faster. Like he just thinks poor people's homes are ugly and disturbing. My grandmother isn't as well off, but she used to refuse to come inside our old house for the same reason. They don't seem to have any empathy, even for their own family members who are struggling. It's just gross poor people. It's about perceptions and personal standards that people imagine are important. It's also about experience. If someone gets knocked on their ass and loses their livelihood and savings, then that person is forced to judge themselves or reevaluate their perspective on life. Yet, I used to be super right-wing and thought how much money you have is only dependent on how much you work. Then, life kicked my ass and I had to rebuild and relearn. Now I can't stand my old right-wing friends. It's tough realizing there's no bootstraps or boots or straps. When you're in the shit, no one wants to be there smelling it with you. I'm glad you got some perspective. It could always be you. Owning loud dogs. I delivery drive in Los Angeles, and almost all the rich neighborhoods I go to, there is silence. No loud, annoying dogs. This is way more motivating than it should be for me to make more money. Dogs barking, idiots blasting music from their cars, and other unnecessary miscellaneous noise drives me crazy. It helps when everyone has multiple acres of property. I'm close enough to my neighbor to hear her washing dishes with all windows and doors closed. And we are in different houses. Sharing walls with other apartments was horrible for me. Constant bombardment of other families' cooking smells, noises, arguments, music, etc., etc., etc. Have lives outside of work? Just this. Witnessing the poors doing literally anything other than work is proof that they are lazy and deserve their circumstances. They don't think we just deserve our circumstances. The riches think we deserve to suffer. If we don't suffer, how can they motivate us to work hard for them? Poverty, in their eyes, is a moral failure. At a company where I used to work, the owner's son thought it was tacky to move yourself and not hire movers. This kid was fresh out of college and dropped straight into a high-paying management position. He said this to a woman making minimum wage while being completely oblivious to the fact that this poor woman was living paycheck to paycheck and that hiring a moving company would cost more than she made in several months. To her credit, she was incredibly gracious about it. But what we should probably just hire movers was definitely an inside joke in our department. For several years, every time he said something completely oblivious, talk about their salaries. Normal people, for the most part, don't mind telling their friends that they got a new job that pays $25 an hour, etc. The wealthy people I know don't talk about what they earn, and it's offensive to ask them. It's personal and private. The moment you make a non-trivial amount of money more than folks around you, talking about it tends to create resentment. I come from a very modest background, but I'm reasonably well off now, and when the topic came up or someone asked me, I used not to think twice about it and answer. People would get pissed, they asked. After a while, you learn that it's not a topic to discuss. Or at least, you know who you can talk about it with, which is, interestingly enough, not super correlated to how much money they have. I grew up lower middle class, blue-collar factory type stuff, and this is the way I was taught. Maybe for the opposite reason, though. I don't know. It used to be that discussing salaries or how much something cost was considered unpolite. Discussing wages, salaries has a place. Out of the blue or with strangers. Weird, vain, and rude, and can make you a target if you make more than others. With close friends, family, normal depending on the conversation, mainly when catching up on life changes. With coworkers, important as a means of preventing exploitation, two people of the same skills, position, and seniority expect roughly the same salary. More stories on the channel, RedStore.